Good morning, afternoon, where you are the world. Welcome to Friday the 8th, LinkedIn Live, Danish and Coffee. Another episode has hit this Friday. Hello, Kevin. Hello, Gary.
Good morning.
Hi, Martin.
Good morning. Good morning. So, to kick this little off here, I said for a couple of days, we have a secret superstar here. And I know Gary, he would say, that's maybe overdoing it. But I didn't mean necessarily that I think Gary is a superstar, but I mean people from operation. And that is some valuable discussions around precisely operation today, how that have involved from the beginning, maybe the last 10 years. How do we see the space moving? And it reminded me to kick this little conversation off how I started. I was 17 years old when I started in the call center industry, sitting in an outbound call center. I remember it like it was yesterday, where you come in and I had telephone list on paper, and then I had a phone like and I needed to do the calls. And I remember I also did collection calls, and when people have to say yes to an agreement, we have to fax it out, and there was a big fax in the office like, and that was like many years ago. That have developed. I think we should talk a little bit about that today, from old days to now. And with that said, welcome to the LinkedIn Live show. Kevin, maybe you want to kick it off a little bit with memory lane. And
I've got to be mindful here. These Danish pastries are not doing my waistline any good. But I think to start, it's probably worthwhile, Gary, just giving us a little intro to yourself, what you do, your role, because we're all about, operationalizing, scaling today. And
yes.
I think some of that wisdom of the journey we've been on is pretty important.
Yeah, so I've been in the industry for 35 plus years now, so I've got a lot of those memories. I was even a collector myself, not that my team even believe that these days, but so I'm the ops director at UK Search, and we've been in the industry for 20 plus years, so running the operation on a day-to-day basis with a very good team behind me, and things have changed dramatically over those years, but I think the last couple of years especially, things are changing and evolving daily. The digital side that we've invested, and I think everyone is having to do, is changing the landscape every day. And I think those conversations we have with the teams and with our clients is we're learning things every day, and things like this chat are great to to get other knowledge of other people and what they're seeing on a day-to-day basis as well.
And Gary, was quite interesting, and we talked a little before we went live also, and saying, okay, back in the days, more simple, just a phone, quite easy. You could do. There was not a lot of maybe rules and regulation of how you should do what and what strategy you should use, and vulnerability wasn't a thing that time. There was a lot of things to now. Also, one thing is it had developed, like for the client base, for the society, it had also changed to run a DCA today tremendously. A lot more is needed.
I mean, when I was, when I joined the industry, there was loads of DCAs. There was, there was 5 or 6 in every town, and you could move around and stuff like that. But running a DCA today in today's world, in today's compliance and governance and stuff, is very difficult. And I think for agents as well, they have an extremely difficult job. And I think our job as the operation is to try and make it as easy as possible. But it's a challenge, and I take my hat off to the guys that do it day in and day out, because the cost of living is, we hear a lot about it, but it's incredible. And what's happened in the news recently, it's not getting any better. And I think that's why these conversations and the talks that we have on a day-to-day basis cover all those sort of areas. How can we best help our customers and make that journey as seamless as possible, and just get them to want to engage with us?
Yeah, it was interesting yesterday, Gary. I was at the Vulnerability Registration Service conference where Alison Walters from the Financial Conduct Authority was presenting, and I mean, I have to say, fantastic presentation. She was readily available all of the day. And then Chris Warburton interviewed her later in the day, and she was very, very open. But the messaging was pretty clear, and I'll just cover a couple of the bits off. So first up, obviously vulnerability came in the discussion, and vulnerability by design, where it may represent a significant portion of any debt collector's book, because they're at least financially vulnerable in the main. But this whole area around testing your communications, the governance of the firm, how you use data effectively. So one of our early use cases was screening portfolios against different data sets to make sure your data quality is good right at the very beginning. Training of staff and making sure staff, whether it involves AI or not, but getting them ready for the new world. Often where, you know, some of these guys don't earn top salaries in some of the instances. And you've inferred this already, Gary, that you're putting more and more demand on some of these guys. We'll talk about complaints in a minute. But it seems to me that since the consumer finance communication went out, which covered debt collectors, debt buyers, debt advice firms in March, there's a real expectation coming up to duty board time in July. So just interested in what dynamic that's creating for you as an ops director, how you discuss this with your peer group on the board, and how much of this around governance, training and data governance are now very much front of mind.
Yeah, I think with two of our guys, you know, Cliff and John, that worked with the ICM in terms of training and stuff. So training features heavily with us, and I think it's something that we've evolved over the last 2-3 years, especially in terms of the cost of living issues that we had, and we had COVID before that and stuff. So we give our staff the time, and you know, the QA team do a lot of that work in terms of making sure that if someone's not quite up to standard, they'll go back and do refreshing and stuff like that. But as a board, we actively discuss on a weekly basis the consumer duty work that we've done, the board reports that go in for that, and our COO that works with our compliance team. So we have daily and weekly conversation with clients alike as well, because we tend to educate our clients a bit on this as well, in terms of, you know, what we're seeing, what our customers are telling us, and things like that. So yeah, it forms an active part.
AI governance, Gary, without putting you on the spot, we talked in our session at the AI event we did in Stratford around AI governance and data governance on that. In this sort of evolving world, where do you see that responsibility sitting? Do you see that sitting in your lap or somewhere else within the team?
I think it always sits with the operation of the department, but the ops and our compliance team work very, very hand in hand. You know, we spend a lot of time looking through that, a lot of the testing, and Martin, the work that we've done with his team, we did a lot of testing and stress testing of that as well, to make sure that things are right for that journey. And a lot of our internal audits in our compliance team are based along customer journey audits and stuff like that. So we spend a lot of time on that, and I think that sits with the ops, to be fair.
We talk a lot about all these new tools and changes, and we talk about staff and responsibility. How do you see, if we go really low practical, how do you see also the impact today as an operation manager, where you have to juggle multiple assignments? You have to juggle to recruit people, to have the right staff, to have the right training. You have to, on the other side, juggle on following through with having all the newest tools, the efficiency you're using, DevStream and things for self-service portals, and all those things. What is the balance between how you used to work, and you have seen that? How do you focus today, and what is the most what is the things that is standing most out of the biggest changes over the last couple of years for you?
I think was, if you look back in the day, all we really had to worry about was how much cash was coming in, and if we need to make our letters slightly stronger, or did we need to just bang the volume of the dialer up and things like that. I think today is we're looking at engagement points. So what's making our customers call us, what's making our customers service online and stuff, and we've been on that journey for a long time. But it's having the ops team underneath me has evolved over that time as well. So I've got a number of people that are on that sort of regulatory journey, if you like, every day. So we have team meetings, we have regular points of contact to say, okay, this is happening in this area, this is happening in this area. And I think that's where the ops from me has changed. And as I get older, I get more, slightly more forgetful, I'm sure the team would say. But having good people under you and attend these, we sent 3 staff to the VRS yesterday, and it was from the compliance and vulnerable team, because that's, it's all right, it's all well and good me going to these things and stuff, but I think they need to be they need to see that as well at the ground level, because they're dealing with the customers. They're dealing with their team that are dealing with that as well, so they're hearing those things.
I mean, it's part of their world, Gary. I think when you look at it, that we had an Australian lad from the ICO there who was pretty open and very communicative, but the first piece of his message was data protection shouldn't get in the way of delivering better customer outcomes. But I think everybody talked about becoming more outcome focused, including sort of Ofgem, the enforcement side of life with Chris from the Enforcement Conduct Board. But one of the areas there that I see as the challenge here that's beginning to get intimated more and more is moving away from just purely internal metrics, average call handling time, wait times, to how do you measure consumer understanding? And these are the areas now, I think at the moment, certainly when you're looking at in the AI world, a lot of this you can adapt quite quickly, but changing agent behavior can take quite some time.
Kevin, in that, what you just said there, do you both think that when you are, as a DCA, you're going out, you're going to price yourself towards the client? And normally in the old days, you're right, it was conversion rate, how much money is coming in, X amount of money that way. Do you think is the part of your pricing now, will it be more a part of the pricing that, as you mentioned there, Kevin, other KPIs will be important? Did we understand that client? Did we X, Y, Z? Did we create something different? Is that KPIs that will now be measured in?
Even last week, Martin, you covered this with regard to pre-engagement work, and I'd be very interested in Gary's views here coming forward. Having a softer communication in advance, which is talking about things like income optimization. Actually, have we understood your circumstances? Can we build your journey better? So you're not going for the jugular in the first call. You're not dangling anybody over a cliff. You're actually having a much more empathetic dialogue, but that comes at a cost.
Yes,
it also conversely improves engagement rates if you get it right. And so I'm going to get off my hobby horse here, but ask Gary that sort of very same thing. Is that better engagement, more empathy? Actually, does it have a downstream benefit? But in terms of breaking a case in, probably a bit more expensive at the beginning.
I think when when the FCA came along, I think everyone in the DCA world was concerned that it was all going to be about regulatory and the affordability and stuff like that. That it wasn't going to be as profitable to run a DCA. But I think doing things properly and doing things the right way, you can still make a successful business. And I think the outcome based is key. Our customer journeys are all about making sure that outcome was the right outcome, and you're giving them all the options that you can to deal with their account, and that's 24 hours a day as well. And I think that's what I've probably noticed the difference over the last however many years, is just having options for customers, giving them everything. We brought in some customer surveys probably 3-4 years ago, and that was one of the best things we did, because that became very clear the things that we were doing right and the things that we were doing wrong. And still today, we listen to every call where it's a slightly negative tone, a response from the survey, to make sure, okay, what can we do differently? Is there a process that's not, having that? So I think, yes, the regulatory cost has gone up quite considerably, but you can still manage that by doing the right thing. And the digital side of it actually gives the customer that empowerment to do those things themselves.
Let's talk a little bit more about the digital side, because one thing that you and UK Search Limited have succeeded with on a quite high level is actually moving people into self-service environment, from that journey from where everything was handling on phone to now there's other options towards the client, and you have succeeded quite a lot with that. Yeah. What are you thinking? What is the next step? What did you do? Maybe a little bit about that. But what's the next step for you? How do, beside you and me are working on AI voice support to your agents and add another tool to the omnichannel strategy? But how do you see that evolving over time?
I think I've just come off a call with a couple of our ops teams and the ops guys from our portal, and I think we're all saying that, okay, what else can we do? And we've put some things in place now where customers can handle their disputes and other things as well. So it's not just about income and expenditures. There's customer journeys on there. So there's a lot more things, and I think the AI side is definitely one. I think if they're going to be in a queue for 20-30 seconds, and we might as well be telling them all the things that they can do without wanting to handle stay on the phone and type things. So because I think more people these days don't have the time to just stand sit there and on a phone for 10 minutes. They want to do it in their own time whilst they're watching the football later on, or something they can go online, do a web chat and that type of thing. So it's giving them every opportunity as easy as possible to handle that, that engagement with you.
So Gary, we touched on this just before we kicked off today, but you've already skirted around the topic of QA and the scale now, and the level of call listening that's involved in it. We also talked about complaint handling. So despite the fact that we've all improved our service immensely, the Financial Ombudsman Service confirmed that 35% of the complaints they're seeing are now being written by ChatGPT or similar. We are getting more savvy people, and you've got to protect your business. So what are you seeing in that space at the moment? So despite the fact you're putting lots of prevention measures in.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the prevention is obviously the first place you have to do it. But I think, there's still going to be times where it goes wrong, whether that's a process, whether that's an agent, whether it's the agent and customer not agreeing. I think complaints is to be fair is it's got more complicated, and I think hence they're getting clever with the AI tools to write a complaint and stuff. And our complaint handling has gone from one individual to there's 4 individuals that cover complaints now, just because of the volume that we get. And but actually when you look at it, I think that's, as long as you're doing those preemptive things, you're never going to please every customer. And as long as you can get to a stage where you've done as much as you can for them, and you're trying to the empathy and stuff that's there, I think it's just making sure that all those processes are in place.
Your touch, and Kevin and Bulgaria, you're also running this. So one thing is going on for actually more and more of our conversation. I think that's of course because of the situation. The situation in society have changed. The financial situation are changing, has changed. It's like, I think it's not looking like stopping anywhere. So that's also why we need to change that. That's why you have more responsibility, need to offer the right routing, the right services, the right kind of tools and set for all these clients. So one thing is to say, I know I say it a lot, and I think it's a global phenomenon. So it's not only for UK listeners. So the vulnerability part, that people are vulnerable, not that there is regulation that you need to do something, but what does that demand then, besides other omni-channel system, other things? Can you use it in and don't misunderstand that combination? Can you use it as a positive thing? that you know that people are vulnerable? And if so, what is your thought about that?
Yeah, I think we've looked at we look at our vulnerable stats on a daily basis, but I think we've used it in a positive approach that still, of all the vulnerable cases we've got, probably 40 to 50% of those are in a repayment plan, but it's a repayment plan that they can afford, and so because getting out of debt is still helping them and stuff like that. So it's showing them the benefits, and I think it's also educating clients, because clients will come to us and say, we've got these pot of accounts, we know they're vulnerable because they've filled in PSR and stuff like that. We just don't know. We don't have the resource to deal with that. It takes a lot longer to deal with that. So our vulnerable process has evolved over the last 5-6 years, and I think that's going to get. You're right what you're saying about the current climate. It's not going to get any better for a period of time.
No.
So.
It doesn't look like that, at least. I remember Chris Warburton, he showed on a couple of shows back the prognosis for the UK market, and that was not like funny. Let's just say he ruined the morning coffee with that little presentation, because it didn't look super nice. So,
Gary, we've called it the doomometer, but it actually tracks what the Bank of England put out with their 3 scenarios as to where inflation and interest rates are going to head. It goes back to the comment from Alison that says, if you've got people on time to pays, how do you predict that they're going to come under stress, and you engage with them proactively? And I'm just interested in your view on that, where you've got clients that are regularly paying you, how you see that shifting, where for example, if you're collecting maybe an energy debt or something similar, there may be some stress within that, and there may be a need for proactive engagement. Do you see that as a bigger role for debt resolution firms going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that has changed probably in the last couple of years is our payment plan review process used to be sort of every 6 to 12 months. We've changed that to every 3 months now, because I think things are changing, mortgage rates, all that type of thing. So I think, we've had to be preemptive with that, and given them more opportunity. They can do that online. We'll send them information about why the bills have gone up and stuff like that, but what they can do to support that.
I love what you said. You took it from 6 months to every 3rd month, or you did it, now you're doing it more often. I think it touched a little bit, Kevin and Gary, what we have talked a lot about, proactive engagement, reach out often, do something. And it's not only because if you do that often, you can review and make sure that customer is still having the same difficult situation, they can pay that, but it's also that I see that as a positive engagement, to revisit it, to give them that service call or whatever you call it more often, or give them that opportunity to self-service and update themselves a little bit. It's inviting people to dialogue. And I think that is the biggest thing. When I say vulnerability, for me, it says we need to engage differently, or we need to be opening our arms and on the doors and saying, hey, we want to talk, we want to engage, we want to find a solution. Yeah. If you don't like to speak about it, you can talk to an AI assistant, you can go to a self-service, you can talk to a human with empathy if you want that. You are also working a little bit about, Gary, the thought about, could you do an income and expenditure? There is like, could you do a policy and practice kind of a tool on the website or something like that, where you can give people access to calculate? It's a positive thing, again, where you say to people, hey, come in here, let's see if we can help you, let's engage together. And that's, for me, what's coming out of that.
I mean, that was very interesting out of the regulators yesterday across all of the sectors, that where does income optimization fit into a customer journey? And should it be incumbent upon all firms at different stages in the supply chain? I'd be, again, interested in Gary's view around this in terms of how we see debt resolution firms fitting something like that in the journey. And it's not just, benefits. It's things like social tariffs, where auto enrollment's now becoming more commonplace, priority service register to take stress out of people's lives when you have very acute points. And we've done events, Martin, where they follow just after a major water outage or a power outage where people are stressed, or the bank has gone down, the payment system's gone down. So how you show forbearance and tooling on that. So Gary, be interested in where you see that, whether you see that as just an upfront onboarding process or something that fits into this constant review process.
Yeah, I've talked to the policy and practice guys and stuff, and we're reviewing that at the moment at the board level to see if where we feel that fits within the process. I think first of all is making note of that on our portal and our website, because I think if it identifies that, we know how much traffic we get through. 40% of our payments at the moment are coming through our portal, so we know that we can, if we put that message on there, that hopefully they'll see that with other customer journeys and stuff like that.
On that point, Gary, so we're running a bit short of time, but going back to our outcome focus, where you're doing the right thing, let's say moving somebody into an income optimization or data sharing around their affordability, or referring to debt advice when they got multiple debts, where a client doesn't take up a best practice, how, one, you've got to record it, but two, how do you deal with that consumer differently, where they are not necessarily acting in their own best interest versus those that do take up your recommendations?
Well, I think we have the vulnerable team that if we feel there's some vulnerability in there, we will pass it through to them, and then so it's not dealt with within the sort of main call centers and stuff. Engagement is just that's what we're key is just trying to sell the benefits of them talking to us, and that, as Martin said, that's now using AI voice agents as well. So it's just and all we revamped the website recently with just a lot more information about vulnerable, how much we can help them and stuff, and we've seen a significant increase in just the engagement, which doesn't always mean payment, and that's fine. It's about the outcomes, and at times there'll be a time where we give those accounts back to our clients and say, look, these people need some extra support. They don't want to deal with us; they want to deal with with you guys, and looking at the social tariffs and things like that. So we're actively selling those as much as we can for the
We've got 3 minutes left. I'd be very keen to know what are the top 2 or 3 things on your mind at the moment as an ops director, looking at the horizon in a difficult economy.
I think affordability is the biggest one for customers. I think and the other issue we have is that clients are constantly driving down commissions and stuff like that. So we're looking at different models of pricing for clients. But I think in terms of customers, affordability is that, and it's constantly making changes to our portal to give them the best view of being able to manage that account at all levels in different types of sort of information, and then just I think staffing wise is training the staff to deal with customers, sending them understanding more about vulnerability themselves and stuff, so that that they can deal with those as best they can.
Martin, final thoughts before we announce our guest for next week?
Oh yeah, that's right. I just think it's very interesting. It's super nice to hear from people in operation. I think we should do more. I encourage the industry to share those things more and the journeys we are going on. It's a lot more complex now than it has ever been, and I think there's so many tools, there's so many knowledge, there's so many new ways of engaging and sharing that with each other, and that role that you have is just like it's developing, and I think on a personal level it's very interesting. Now we are older people, I'm sorry to say so, but when we started back in the days to now, it's a super interesting journey.
You're young, Martin. You're young.
I know. So thank you. Any last word on the last 20 seconds, because we come with a little announcement of who is the guest next week. Any last thoughts?
Gary, any last word of wisdom?
Well, I think it's a difficult industry, but it's one that we can help our customers by just giving them every option. That's what we've got to try and do, and support the customer journey.
I love. With that word, thank you, Gary. Thank you, Kevin. On next Friday, the 5th 15th, we are having a special new guest. One of my good guys also in the industry, one of my favorites besides you, Gary, is Daniel Calcott from Digital DRA. That is changing the industry around us. With that said, I wish you all a fantastic weekend, a fantastic rest of this Friday. Have a good and see you all. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Gary. See you.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, guys. Cheers. Take care.